We'll get started. So welcome to our Freshwater Stewardship Community Webinar Series. We're really excited to continue on with our Invasive Species Awareness Series with our keynote presenter, Robert with us today. He's the Aquatic Project Specialist with the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. And we have a couple of staff members from Watersheds Canada. My name is Nicole, I'm the Freshwater Health Coordinator. And we also have Monica, who is the Communications and Fundraising Manager. Monica will be able to help you if you have any tech problems. Feel free to send her a private message through Zoom. And now just a little bit about Watersheds Canada. We're a nonprofit and charitable organization based in Perth, Ontario. We deliver programs across the country in partnership with landowners, community groups, and students who are looking to take action to protect their local freshwater. So on the screen, you can see a couple of photos of our different programs. On the top left, we have our Natural Edge program, where we work with community groups and shoreline owners to naturalize their property using native plants. On the bottom left, we have our Love Your Lake program, which is delivered in partnership with the Canadian Wildlife Federation. It's a shoreline evaluation program where we fill out an assessment for each property, and each property owner gets custom recommendations that are voluntary, so they can help protect the health of their lake. And then on the top right, we have our fish habitat restoration program. So in that photo, you can see a winter spawning bed enhancement project. So we put washed river stone on top of the ice, and then in the springtime, that when it melts, it drops into place. And then finally on the bottom right, you can see our nature discovery programming. So that's outreach to children and youth, and we help provide people with tools to let them safely connect with nature. And now for the program that we're here for today, the Freshwater Stewardship Community is an online community that's connecting people from across the country. And we're in year 3 of this program, which launched in 2021. We have many of our webinars and our handouts archived on our website. So you can find those at watersheds.ca/freshwater-stewardship. And I'd encourage you to check those out after today's webinar. We have a variety of topics about freshwater, from the private sector, other nonprofits, and academia. And we would also like to thank the Peterborough KM Hunter Charitable Foundation and the SM Blair Family Foundation for their funding support this year. I just wanted to take a moment to let you know about our upcoming webinar. It's happening tomorrow and is the last of our Invasive Species Awareness series. So tomorrow at 1 p.m. you can tune in to learn more about an invasive species called grass carp. So you can register at our website there as well. And as part of our Invasive Species Awareness series, we've created some resources and activities that are released each day on our social media accounts. We've also put together an invasive species management toolkit, which is going to be released on Friday. So we're very excited about that. And you can keep an eye out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn for those. And Monica will add our socials in the chat so you know where to find them. And I also wanted to let you know that after today's webinar, you'll receive a recording of the webinar by email. And we also provide an educational handout that looks similar to this one. So we'll highlight some of the key points from Robert's presentation and provide some additional resources. So keep an eye out for that in your inbox soon. And finally, the webinar that we're here for today, and our speaker Robert's passion for the outdoors has led him to a career in the environmental field. For the past 17 years, he has gained valuable experience while employed with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, Credit Valley Conservation, Trent University, and Fleming College. For the past 10 years, Robert has worked as the management technician at the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, where he is working with the Water Soldier Working Group to monitor and control the water soldier populations on the Trent-Severn Waterway, Red Horse Lake, and private ponds across Ontario. So if you think of any questions throughout the presentation, you can feel free to add them in the chat, and then I'll read them out loud to Robert during the question and answer period. And with that, I will pass it over to you, Robert.
Thanks, Nicole. Just let me start sharing my screen here, and thanks for having me today. And we'll get this show on the road. Here we go. So, hello everybody, my name is Robert McGowan. I'm the Aquatic Project Specialist at the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. Today I'll be speaking to you about water soldier and the eradication efforts in Ontario over the past 10 years. So we'll start off with what is water soldier. We'll go into a bit of the habitat, morphology, and ecology. Go through some how we monitor and look for the plant, and some of the control options that we utilize through our lessons learned over the past 10 years, and then go into some best practices with those control options. So what is water soldier? Water soldier is an invasive perennial aquatic plant that is native to Europe and Northwest Asia. The first known wild population in North America was found in the Trent River in 2008, which is near the hamlet of Trent River, Ontario. Water soldier was used as an ornamental plant in water gardens, which is a likely source of introduction to the Trent River. And so why is water soldier a problem? So water soldier forms dense mats of floating and submerged vegetation. It crowds out native vegetation, which results in decreased biodiversity. Dense floating mats of water soldier can hinder recreational activities such as boating, angling, swimming, and hunting. And the sharp serrated leaf edges can cut swimmers. And individuals who handle a water soldier should take precaution, because you can see in this picture on the right here, those sharp serrated spines will cut you. So what kind of habitat does water soldier like? So the typical habitat water soldier is slow flowing mesoeutrophic water. It's not found in very shallow water or very fast water, or in areas where the water fluctuates greatly due to its sinking and floating behavior. Under conditions of low light, the leaves do not develop enough gas in their air canals to become emergent. So it's pretty common to find water soldier as a bottom dwelling plant. So water soldier appears as two different forms, emergent, which is on the picture on the right, and submergent, which is the picture on the left. The submergent form overgrows the bottom in the littoral zone and has long, bright green, brittlely, spirally twisted, mature leaves that have serrated margin of sharp spines. The emergent form breaches the water surface and has stiff, erect leaves with the same serrated spines. On the margin, in late spring, the rosettes form roots that grow into the sediment, loosely anchoring the plant. And at the same time, the offsets and turions start to form, which is their main means of reproduction. Flowering in emergent plants occurs in midsummer in Ontario. However, we've sent some of these flower heads to the herbarium in Ottawa, and the seed isn't viable. So it's not spreading via seed, and this is pretty typical with its home range as well. Its main means of reproductions are those turions and offsets. So the rosette leaves can grow up to 60 centimeters. They're bright green in color. The leaves are sword-shaped, rigid, brittle, and have serrated margin and spines. The flowers are white with 3 petals. And asexual reproduction is done by way of the offsets and turions. And you can see in this picture right here, that's one of the offsets. So they grow from the rosette of the plant, and there could be multiple offsets and turions on each mother plant. So water soldier relies primarily on vegetative reproduction through these offsets and turions. The offsets develop directly into open rosettes, resembling a small version of the parent plant, and become detached by late summer. Offsets that develop late in the growing season are almost bud-like and are called turions. These turions remain attached to the mother plant until the following spring when they detach. So you can see here, these are the turions here, they're bud-like structures. And this is what the offsets. And you can see this offset here is very large, and it will detach from the mother plant and start to grow its own turions and offsets. And these water soldier plants can have multiple offsets and turions. And in one growing season, this offset will grow into a mother plant and have multiple offsets. So you can see how fast this plant can spread and reproduce. So, what do we do about water soldier? When we were first discovered water soldier in 2008, it has been present in North America. It was the first discovery of the plant here. So there was no clear agency responsible for addressing the invasive plant. There was legislative gaps to address import, sale, and possession of water soldier. And that's why the Invasive Species Act was introduced in 2015 and listed water soldier as a restricted species, which kind of closed up those gaps. Water soldier had no history of management in North America or Europe, and where it's native from. So there was limited information available on control, and that's where Trent University was pivotal in doing a lot of research on the biology and of the plant. And we had limited control options. So when the plant was here, we were just hand pulling. We did get an emergency label restriction for reward, but that took time to get reward, a water soldier listed under the reward label. So we were kind of stuck in just using hand pulling. In 2013, we established an interagency working group to help provide technical and field support to guide our response. So to address the serious threat of water soldier, an integrated management plan was drafted to help prevent new introductions of water soldier to the province and to eradicate existing populations that threaten to invade provincial, national, and international waters. So the integrated management plan is updated every 5 years, and a new draft is being developed for the next 5 years right now. So that will be from 2023 to 2027. The working group is comprised of Parks Canada, Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, Trent University, Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, Quinte Conservation, Lower Trent Conservation. So there's a lot of players involved. And we're moving forward on developing a new integrated management plan, which is meant to be a living document. And as we move forward and learn our lessons for what works and what doesn't work, we're going to kind of focus on developing that plan to our new kind of goals. So water soldier was first reported in the Trent-Severn Waterway in 2008, but there has been other incidents of water soldier popping up in the wild. So in September 2015, water soldier was found in a tributary off Lake Simcoe, the Black River. And in 2020, another wild occurrence was reported to us in Red Horse Lake, which is north of Kingston. We also have several private ponds across the province that we've addressed. I think there's about 17 of them. So with this plant being sold in nurseries and water garden stores, people like the plant. It's unique, it floats, it looks cool. People would buy it and put it into their private ponds. So how do we monitor for the plant? Excuse me. So we utilize a point intercept design to sample the study area. The grid scale is 50 by 50 meters, and all line intercepts have unique identifiers. As you can see here, we have broken down this portion of the Trent-Severn Waterway into sections, and then we grid it with the 50 by 50 meter grid, and all of these point intercepts have a unique identifier. So we go out and we monitor. So each crew is equipped with a tablet and real-time GPS that shows the grid lines and the crew's position in the sampling area in real time. We travel by boat along these grid lines, recording a value of 0 to 3, which is our water soldier values. So 0 being no water soldier and 3 being a dense colony. And we do that at each 50-meter grid intercept. The boat driver trolls along the survey line, calling out each 50-meter intercept or survey point. If the observers are able to see the bottom of the lake, they may include any water soldier plant they have observed between those 2 points, and record the value at the intercept point. If you can't see the bottom of the lake due to depth or turbidity, the boat driver remains over the point, and the observer uses a double-sided rake on a telescopic pole to collect samples of the submergent aquatic plants that may be present. And we also record the water soldier value and the top 3 aquatic plants present. So this is kind of the data collected and then put into a map. So this is what it looks like when the water soldier values are transferred into a visual form. So water soldier values for each point intercept is interpolated into polygons. It's similar to cringing. I'm not a GIS expert at all. I'm glad we have them, but I'm not very proficient in GIS. So basically, the water soldier values 0, 1, 2, 3 have just been changed into a color ramp. So blue, obviously that would be a 0. Yellow would be the 1, so a single plant. Orange is 2 for scattered plants, and 3 is red for dense colonies. So as you can see, this was 2017, now we're into 2018. This information is helpful not only for directing our control efforts each year, but because the survey grid and protocol are consistent, we can track effectiveness and evaluate our success of treatments each year. So obviously this is more of a qualitative assessment versus quantitative, but it kind of helps guide our management decisions and gauge our success from year to year. And so you can see here again, we can see that we've done a pretty good job with going from 171 hectares down to 13. But this is where now we're at the point where we need to revisit our integrated management plan. And instead of that kind of broad scale treatment of the water soldier populations, we're getting down to the nitty gritty now, where we're going to have to be adaptive and think of new ways to address these smaller populations. So we have a timeline series here from a landowner from the Trent-Severn Waterway, and she was each year documenting the water soldier populations on her shoreline. So this is the summer 2013, and you can see that water soldiers present in the shore, along the shore here and down out into the littoral zone a bit. You see some scattered plants. So this is looking, she's on her dock looking down into the bay. So this is 2014. You can see that those scattered plants have now started to form that dense mat that we talk about when we talk about water soldier. It's that really dense, thick populations where really nothing else is going to be, it's just out competing all of our native plants. And you can see here, the landowner has now had to change her view. So she's now looking out from her dock instead at the shoreline. And the water soldier has kind of filled in all of that area. And this is only in the timeline of 2 years. So this is in the spring of 2015, and this is in the summer of 2015. So now in a short 2 years, those little scattered water soldier populations have taken over this entire bay, right? And this really demonstrates why water soldier is a real issue. And I'm gonna leave you on this picture for now. This guy's not going anywhere soon anyway. He's gonna have a hard time getting out of here, but we'll revisit this timeline series a little bit later in the presentation. So control options. So over the past 10 years, when the integrated management plan was developed, we have utilized some of the control options, and we did some pilot control projects to test the efficacy of these treatments. So I'm just going to go through some of the treatments and what we use now, because we've gone through and found out what works best. So hand pulling. So individual water soldier plants and small populations of water soldier, less than 25 meters squared, can be controlled by hand pulling. The reason for this is once you start pulling water soldier, especially in a dense population, the water becomes very turbid because the roots are lightly anchored in the soft muddy sediments. And so as you're pulling the plants, the water column becomes clouded with all those suspended solids, and you lose sight of these plants. And as that happens, water soldier is a floating plant, so it just floats away and you never see it kind of do that, and it'll just go somewhere else and establish, and in a short time become a very larger population. So what we recommend is, you can see here I have a seine net that I use around smaller populations. We contain the populations with either booms or seine nets or some kind of drop mat. So we ensure that we're not contributing to the problem, but spreading the plant more. And, you know, so right here, we've pulled all of this water soldier out of this net, and now we have to just go and wait for an hour for all those suspended solids to kind of drop back down to the substrate, and we can go back and cherry pick all the rest of the plants that we want. And again, we have to consider the size of the infestation. So anything less than 25 meters squared is viable for hand pulling. Anything larger than that, we should not be starting to hand pull. We want to make sure that we are able to completely remove the whole population when we start this project, because I've had a lot of people, landowners, be really eager to get out there and pull. And I think they underestimate the amount of work and effort it takes to do so. And, you know, once you start disturbing these populations and you leave those edges open, wind, wave action, and wakes from boats dislodge those plants and spread them to new areas. The best time for hand pulling is in the early summer, before they produce their turions, because later in the year, these turions become much easier. They detach a lot easier. So when you're handling the plant, you're dropping these turions back into the water, and those in turn turn into new water soldier mother plants. Preventing the spread, that's key, right? And that's why we're using these booms. You can see here that seine net again around the population. This is a boom that we put across a dam in the Black River when we were doing our hand pulling efforts, just to prevent the spread downstream. So the integrated management plan had a mechanical harvester as one of the control options. In 2015, we pilot controlled this control method over a 7-day period. And over a 7-day period, we removed 192 cubic yards of water soldier, which was, I'd say, about 2 surface acres of water soldier. At the time, we did not have booms, and it turned out to be a very sloppy operation where, well, you can see in this picture here, all the scattered plants. We didn't know as much information as we knew at the time when we took on this pilot control project. And we think that with the substrate of the Trent-Severn Waterway being shallow and it has a lot of those back bay kind of stump logs and pilings, this method really isn't suitable. But if we had water soldier in a different lake, that was, you have to take all that into consideration, I guess. Not totally suitable for the area that we had, but you know, we had to go through the process to learn. So we are revisiting the use of a mechanical harvester. We're just kind of being more strategic on our path forward this time. So herbicide application. So within Canada, Diquat, our label name Reward, is the only herbicide currently registered with the Health Canada's Pest Management Regulatory Agency to control for water soldier and aquatic systems. Diquat can provide control of medium to large infestations of water soldier. It is non-selective. It's a non-selective contact herbicide. And so for that reason, we opt to treat in the fall. This is when a lot of our native plants have already gone dormant, and they've stored their energy and their roots for the coming winter. And we've really seen great success with Reward in certain areas, in these large, dense mats of water soldier. And that's where we came to the hand pulling kind of less than 25 meters squared, because we were finding that the herbicide doesn't have the residency time in a population that small. So when you apply the herbicide, it doesn't stay in that area as long as it should to be effective. But in these dense colonies, water movement and the way the herbicide moves in the water, it seems to stay there and have that residency time to be effective. So we're revisiting that poor guy in August 2015 trying to get his boat out of that back bay. Well, 2 years later, after 2 treatments with reward, this is what that back bay looks like. And you can't see water soldier. I'm sure there's a little bit left over, but again, using a 2-pronged approach, now this is where we go in and we would hand pull those single to scattered plants that were left. So with all these lessons learned, with the introduction of water soldier into the Black River, we already had a lot of these lessons learned from the Trent-Severn Waterway. So as you can see here, in 2015, we got a report of water soldier in the Black River, Aurora District MNRF, Peterborough MNRF, and OFH hit the ground running, and we utilized all of our lessons learned. So basically here, we put a boom around the population. We were hand pulling those smaller, less than 25 meters squared populations and getting them out of the water. And we performed a herbicide treatment in 2015 and 2016. And since that time, we monitored the Black River every year, and we have not found any plants. With that being said, since 2020, we've been taking water samples for eDNA, and we have been getting hits for the past 2 years. So we're getting positive hits on the eDNA, but we can't find any physical plants. So hopefully there are no viable plants left, and it just takes this long for water soldier to decay and not be detectable in the water. So we'll be out in 2023 and we'll be taking more water samples. And hopefully we stop getting hits. And we also go out and we will do physical monitoring as well. So private ponds in Ontario. So we've treated a total of, I think it was 15 ponds now. So we get landowners calling us. As you can see here, this is why we get the phone call, because this guy's wife loved her pond, but he said that, it just filled in and it looked like part of the grass. So we came and we did some hand pulling efforts as much as we could. This is in Blackstock, Ontario, this population. So we took out as much water soldier we could by hand, and then we had a herbicide treatment, and it was very effective. There's no more water soldier in this pond, and we've had, I think we're at a 68% success rate of eliminating water soldier from private ponds. This year we treated 2 ponds. One wasn't very successful, but one I haven't seen. We used Procelicor, which was used under a research authorization by the company CPRO. And in less than 2 months, there was hardly any water soldier left in the pond. So this is good news, possibly getting some new tools in our toolbox to address water soldier, but we'll have to see how that registration works out. And on to Red Horse Lake. So Red Horse Lake is north of Kingston. In the height of the pandemic in 2020, we got a call from a concerned citizen about a population of water soldier here. Again, learned our lessons from the Trent-Severn Waterway and utilized our rapid response. So MNRF, MECP, Invasive Species Center, and OFH all came together and collaboratively worked to rapidly address this population. We didn't see great results the first year, so we went back in 2021 and we monitored. Unfortunately, the population was still there, but fortunate, we didn't find it anywhere else. And in 2022, we implemented the water soldier monitoring protocol onto Red Horse Lake, where we did our 50 by 50 meter sampling at each point intercept. And again, we saw a lot less water soldier at the initial infestation, but we didn't find it anywhere else. So this is really good news. So we did have another herbicide treatment this year, and we're looking forward to getting back out at Red Horse Lake, implementing the monitoring protocol again to assess our efficacy of our treatment in 2023. So with all this said, how do we prevent water soldier or any aquatic invasive species from being introduced to a new water body? And that's clean drain drying. Here in Ontario, the province has regulated watercrafts as a carrier under the Invasive Species Act. This was introduced in 2022. And this requires boaters to remove aquatic species from their boat, trailer, and equipment. So it's law now. So you cannot take your boat out of a water body without removing any aquatic species from it, or you cannot enter another water body before doing this. So this includes draining your bilge. All of your trailer and boat has to be cleaned off. All of your fishing equipment, even if you have a kayak or a canoe, you have to make sure that you clean all the vegetation and mud off before you move into another water body. And disposal water soldier or any other aquatic plant 30 meters away from any water body is recommended. We like to solarize most of our aquatic plants just to make sure, and we do that again 30 meters away from any other water body. And just a reminder that you can report invasive species. I know that this is Watersheds Canada, but this is for Ontario. You can use EDMAP's website, or you can use download the app for EDMAPs. And there's an invading species hotline at 1-800-563-7711. So do we have any questions?
Awesome. Thank you for that great presentation, Robert. Just before we jump into the questions, I wanted to let everyone know about our survey. If you wouldn't mind giving us some feedback, Monica will share the link in the chat. We just want to know if you enjoyed the webinar today and if there's any other topics that you'd like to hear about. So I'll start off with the first question. So it says, I've heard that flowers of water soldier are uncommon in Ontario. Do you know why that is the case?
I do not know why that is the case, but they aren't very common. We saw a bloom of them in 2014 where we were able to collect quite a few of them, but you very rarely see them bloom. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with our environment or if the water. I really don't know. I'm not really on that biology end of the plant. I'm more of the boots on the ground monitoring and whatnot.
Thanks. And the next one, what are your suggestions on getting our community engaged and motivated about water soldier when there are so many other invasive species in our area?
Well, I think usually how it goes is we don't have much involvement from people who don't have water soldier. But once the community water soldier enters a water body in a certain watershed, those people are now, they have a vested interest, and that's when we see the engagement. Basically, once it's too late, that's when people want to get involved. And I encourage you to get involved because it's the right thing to do. And there are a lot of other invasive species around. Like we could spend, we could get a whole population starting to work on removing frag from Ontario, right? It's just your personal interest, I guess. I live on our cottage on a lake, and I have a vested interest there, so I get involved with programs around there. We encourage people, landowners and cottage owners that are within the catchment of where Water Soldier is to engage with us, and we do see good engagement when we have our volunteer days and our annual meetings to kind of inform them and bring them up to speed on what Water Soldier is doing this year. So.
And do you have any suggestions on where to find funding to host invasive species removal projects or groups that people should reach out to get started?
There are funding opportunities. I know the Invasive Species Center has a micro grant for anybody can apply for it, I believe. And it's specifically for invasive species management. So you can start with that one. If you give me some time, I can find other opportunities for you. I know that a lot of the government websites have opportunities for funding for things like this. I just don't know them all off the top of my head right now. That's my email on the screen there. If you want to shoot me an email, I can dig a little and I can probably get you some information on that. We were applying for funding a lot early on in the infestation, and we were pretty successful. But as the program has grown, some of the focus has changed. So a lot of those proposals that we were putting in were for supporting those pilot control projects to get that information on the efficacy of these control methods. So we haven't really done that in the past few years, and probably since about 2019. So
awesome. Yeah. Oh, sorry. We'll just make sure to include any of the funding opportunities that we can find in the educational handout that we'll send around in a couple days. So you can keep an eye out for that. We'll add them in there. And then I have another question here. It says, I've heard that mats can be used to control stands of water soldier. Can you comment on their efficiency compared to chemicals or manual removal?
So, yep, we did pilot control the shade cloth enclosures, what we call them. It's not a mat per se where you put it where you would control like Eurasian water milfoil or curly pondweed or one of those other plants, because this is dense floating mats of plant material. We use something called shade cloth enclosures. So we got rebar and drove them into the substrate, and then we kind of just built walls and a roof, and we covered up these water soldier populations. We did Trent University and OFAH did this together, and there is some data on here. Nick Weisflock from Trent University, he would have the actual data, but for this purpose, we left them for 2 months. We had 3 plots, and there was 98% reduction in water soldier. With that said, there are constraints to this method, because you have to find the right size population, because your structure can't be huge. Wind, wave action, boat wakes would all disrupt these kind of structures that we built. So we had to find the right location where you wouldn't get a lot of boat action. It would be at the opposite end of the fetch of the lake. And if these did, because you can't be there all the time, if something did happen, these did get into the waterway, they do cause a hazard for boats. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're actually going to implement this, and there is a permitting process. So you can't just go out and throw shade cloth down any lake you want. You'd have to go through the proper routes, whether it be a provincial or federal waterway. You'd have to touch base with the government and navigate a permit that way.
I see another question here. It says, how does our lake association go about getting permits for chemical application for large stands of water soldier?
So you could contact a local herbicide, your local herbicide applicator, and they can navigate that process for you. If not, you'd have to contact your pesticide specialist at the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Parks, or sorry, Conservation and Parks. This is in Ontario only I'm speaking about. I can't speak to any other province. I haven't gone through the process there, but I know when we do hire a herbicide applicator, they take the permitting portion on as well. I have never had to fill out a permit for herbicide application. That's usually within their scope of when you contact them. They assume that they're going to be doing that part of the job, from my experience.
Perfect. Thanks for that insight. I see a question that says, I'm a student interested in learning more about invasive species and maybe pursuing it as a career. Can you talk a bit about how you got to your current job?
Yeah. So I attended Fleming College here in Ontario. I took Fish and Wildlife Technician and Technologist program, and then I went to Trent University and I obtained my Bachelor of Science honors degree. Um, my honors bachelor degree was fisheries heavy. I wanted to be into fisheries. I wanted to be a fisheries biologist, and I did a lot of fisheries work through the years, and I kind of just landed in this job, stringing contracts together, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I wasn't out pulling gill nets in and dealing with a bunch of fish. I was monitoring for water sources, still outside, still in the outdoor work, still in the same industry, environmental, and I knew a lot of the people around. I got to work with the government, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, got to work with Parks Canada. So I was making new connections, and it just took off, and I just stuck with it, and I really enjoy it. It's getting that education and getting the experience. Going and volunteering when you're a student is you need those. Well, here in Ontario, you need those 40 hours when you're to graduate as a student. Those 40 volunteer hours. Why not do something that you're interested in? All right, it's a great opportunity to kind of see what you like. It doesn't have to always be like a negative thing or oh, I got to go do this. It's, if you're interested, you might try it out. That's what that time is for.
Thanks, Robert. And another one that says, is OFAH a part of any long-term research studies about water soldier and the impacts it is having on native vegetation and wildlife species?
So Ontario Federation Angus Hunters aren't specifically, but the Water Soldier Working Group is. And Trent University sits on the Water Soldier Working Group, and they do a lot of that biology end of the plant. And they do some environmental impacts. We just had this discussion yesterday where there was some talk about how it affects the fisheries, and there has been no work done on that yet, but it's starting to kind of raise questions for the working group and to see how we want to move forward and what data we want to collect and see how water soldier is really negatively affecting our water system, or if it's not. We don't have those answers yet, but there's good discussions around moving forward with that.
And how do you stay personally motivated when the scale of the problem can seem overwhelming and you don't know where to start?
That's a great question. It's hard some days. It is hard. But as the Water Soldier Working Group, we all have a vested interest in our waterways, and we can't just ignore the problems. We had devastating news last year where we found water soldier in the Bay of Quinte. That was one of our main goals, is to prevent that from happening. And we did such a great job for so long, but this plant's a beast. It's a floating plant in a flowing system. It's very difficult to contain sometimes, and that kind of motivates me. The problems that always arise. I like to solve problems. I like to be challenged, and I use that as motivation.
And do you have any advice for how to engage our municipality in invasive species awareness and prevention programs?
So, do we know where this question is coming from? Because here in Ontario, we have conservation authorities, and the conservation authorities are they're funded by municipally. So that would be one of my starting points here in Ontario. I know that some municipalities in Ontario are starting to develop positions for invasive species management. I know the York region here in Ontario has a position like that. So you could touch base with, I guess if I didn't know where to start with maybe Parks and Rec, and to see if there is a point of contact for invasive species in your municipality. And if not, ask them if they are doing anything about invasive species, if they have an invasive species plan. I think opening the conversation is a good starting point. But if you are in Ontario, maybe you can contact your conservation authority, and maybe they would already have a relationship built with the municipality.
Thanks, that's helpful. And that's the last question we have. So if anyone thinks of any more questions after the webinar, you can feel free to email us at info@watersheds.ca or email Robert. His email's on the screen here. And I just wanted to remind everyone to register for our next webinar tomorrow about grass carp. And that concludes our webinar today. So thank you everyone for coming, and have a great rest of your day.